This may seem like a simple question, but it actually has profound implications when shopping annuities. And it's a question of how much. How much should I put in an annuity? And how much should I put in a specific type of annuity? And although it seems simple on the surface, it actually is a little more profound than that. In that, you don't want all your liquid assets to be in any kind of vehicle that's locked for a period of time. That's where people get in trouble, where they end up paying penalties, surrender charges, because it turns out they didn't foresee something, they need some of that back. So in our example of $100,000 we talked about, maybe you inherited $100K. Should you put the whole $100K in an annuity? That's probably not going to be a good fit, and we'll tell you that up front. And in fact, the carriers now are starting to really scrutinize that, where they look at your total liquid assets, and if you put 100% in there, they'll decline the application now. Usually the general rule of thumb is no more than 40, 50, 60%, depending on the situation. But you don't want 100% of everything that you have that's liquid, so cash or anything that can be converted to cash, stocks, bonds, anything that can readily be accessed. You don't want all of that in any vehicle. It just doesn't make sense. You definitely don't want it in an annuity, most likely, because if you end up, let's say you need 20, 30K of that for an emergency or something that comes up, you're going to pay a surrender charge, you're going to pay a penalty. There are all kinds of things that come into play there. You may not have access to it, depending on how you structure it. So the amount you have to put in an annuity is the first piece. And again, aim for 40, 50, 60%. We can walk through your situation. If you don't need this 100K you just inherited, all right, then maybe that goes into annuity because you have other liquid assets. That's the first piece to look at, because you are locking it in for at least some period of time without paying a surrender charge. And so you want to not have to touch it, because the whole point of this is to make income off of this asset. If you turn around and pay a surrender charge that offsets that, we just did nothing. And that's not in your best interest, and we don't like to see that. So that's the first piece, is how much money. The other piece is how much in a certain type of annuity. If I have 100K to invest in annuities, maybe 50 goes into a fixed amount, and then 50 goes into an index annuity that can capture maybe some upside above what a fixed account would capture. And we'll go into that in a whole separate video. But you can layer and structure these, and that's a question of, if interest rates are super low, do I take 50% of it now and then structure that I'm going to do another 50% in a year or two, thinking it might go higher? So there's some strategy we'll look at later on in terms of how much and in what style, so we have a little bit in each pot in case one works out better than the other. Don't try to second guess or time the market. No one's good at that. Even the big carriers are kind of hoping you do that, the big companies. So there are strategies where we can have a spread of options, and we can even do that with annuity durations or annuity types. Let's now talk about the duration piece. The second question to ask yourself before shopping for an annuity is all around duration and timing. And there are a couple aspects to look at here. For one, how long am I comfortable having this money tied up? 5 years, 10 years, indefinitely? That's a key question to ask yourself, because you may not need the money right now. You may need it 10 years from now. Maybe retirement's coming up, or maybe you want to pay off something. So ask yourself, what is the length of time you're comfortable without having the principal back? You can have an immediate annuity that starts to pay income right away over a period of time. That period of time is what you want to ask, and understand that you can layer annuities. So you can buy a 7-year annuity and then each year buy another 7-year annuity and have it staggered and layered. You can even buy a 5-year or shorter period annuity, and then at the end of 5 years, you roll that into another one, or you buy another one. You can stagger those in terms of duration so that you always have some money that's available, but you're able to earn off of that initial asset based on the longer duration that you can, because the longer you pick, the more potential interest or gain you will have on that annuity. So that's one way to think of it, the duration that you're comfortable having that money. Then the second piece is the duration that you're going to get paid. If I buy a 10-year single premium annuity, I put 100K down, like in our example, and I'm going to get interest paid back to me over a 10-year window. That's very clean and easy. And then I can buy another annuity 5 years from now, but I have additional funds, or I can take after 10 years, roll that into a different annuity. So how long do you expect to be paid? For some people, they like that incremental chain type effect. So if they do need the money, if something changes, they have it available to them. Other people are looking for lifetime income. It's not as popular, believe it or not, versus the accumulation where I'm going to have it for a period of time. Because again, people like that flexibility, but you can buy an annuity, either single premium or even over a series of payments that will then pay for the rest of your life. And as we talked about, that's almost like a reverse life insurance policy, and that it's going to, they have a fairly good estimate of how long an average person will live. If you live longer, you're going to make more off of the carrier. If you live shorter, then you'll make less. There are ways to structure that so you get money back. It doesn't disappear, goes to your beneficiaries or whatnot. But that's the second piece. So duration, how long I'm going to have the money locked up. And then second piece is payment, how long I expect to get paid or to earn off of that asset. And there's strategies there we're going to talk about in a different video on how to look at that in any kind of climate. High interest rate, low interest rate, record high stock markets like right now, record low. There are ways to kind of strategize that, and we'll talk about that separately. That's the second question. Now let's turn to the final or third question is, how consistent does that income need to be for you? How comfortable are you with risk? The final piece is, how consistent does the income need to be from an annuity? This really gets to the heart of why we're picking annuity versus all the other options we can look at. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds. We talked about different things you can do with a lump sum or an asset like 100K in our example. So why this is important is it's on a gradient, meaning you can have very safe but very fixed lower interest with something like a MYGA, right? Like a fixed annuity over a period of time. And in our 100K example, it's a single premium. Put 100K down, you're going to get this interest rate for this period of time. It's very consistent. So that would be on one side of it where you really need to have that income coming in. Maybe you've retired, you're trying to meet $1,000 of extra expenditure that you have every month that your current Social Security doesn't meet. You need that $1,000 and you reverse engineer it to kind of figure out this amount will give me that over a 10-year window, 20-year window, or for the rest of my life. And again, you get different interest rates depending on the duration you pick, so that's important. That's why we even went over that in the first section. So that's on one side of things. All the way on the other, we're not going to talk about variable annuities because you can have loss of principal. And in our view, there are probably cheaper ways to do that. An ETF, for example, if you're going to have risk, then annuities, variable annuities might be an expensive way to try to mirror that. There are ways to do that are cheaper to do. However, the indexed annuities or fixed index annuities are on the other side of the scale of what we're looking at, in that they're tied to a benchmark that can fluctuate. For example, the S&P, right? And as the S&P goes up, they will capture some of that, and we'll go in depth as to how to really shop and compare all those options. But it'll capture some of that gain in addition to some fixed guaranteed or contractual guaranteed amount that the annuity is going to pay. So in a flat year, that one component that's tied to the index, or in a down year, might be flat. In an up year, it might add a couple percentage points to your contractual amount. That's how you look at it. It's a contractual amount plus whatever this other piece does, depending on the benchmark that it's trying to mirror. And again, it's never going to get the full pop of that. And there are all kinds of little ways they structure that, and we'll go into how to decipher that whole nonsense in another section. But That's going to have a little more flexibility. There are certain years where if there's a down year in the market, for the example, the S&P, it may be flat. It may have no interest payment. Well, that's tricky. If you're depending on income to meet your expenditures, you really can't deal with down or flat years. That's the whole reason you kind of came to annuities to begin with. So that's the third piece we have to look at. The third question, how consistent is this? I may have more gain over here, but I have to understand that income is not always going to be as consistent as a fixed annuity or a MYGA, right? Now, maybe the best bet is you have a mix. You have 50%, 50K in our example, and a MYGA, 50% in an index annuity. That way, you have this consistent income and you have this that might give you a little bit more gain in up years, and then there's kind of a blending of the two. That to us is a great strategy, and we're going to have a whole separate video on strategies and how to look at this. But now we have our three key questions, which is how much, what duration is that money going to be tied up that I'm comfortable with? What duration is it going to pay out for? And then how comfortable am I with that amount fluctuating? Do I need it to be fixed and locked in, or can I have it a little more variable, but there might be a little more upside than that fixed number we're looking at? That's it. Three questions. And then we're going to do a separate video which dives into how we take these three questions and we shop the market and get the best fit for us. Because do not trust anyone who has just one plan, one carrier, and they're like, oh, this is the way to go. Look at this shiny thing up front. No, you need to see all the options out there to make a good decision based on these three questions. We're going to talk about that whole piece in a separate video. Reach out to us with any questions. We can run numbers for you. We can go through the nuance of these different pieces and see if we can find different options that fit right for your situation.